Hello, this is Jane. I want to talk about something a little bit different on this channel. I used to do it a lot in the past. I'm talking about Manchester United, and I just want to give my thoughts on what's happened for the season, um, and where the fault actually lies. Normally, I would do this upstairs, but it's a nice day outside, and because I have my Manchester United stuff up there, and so you could see that stuff in the background, but. Uh, it's more important just for me to say what I have to say. I've watched a lot of people talk about this, from Gary Neville, who used to play for Manchester United. Can't really say anything or dispute anything he's said. He said on yesterday after City won their game against Leicester. I watched United People's TV. The guy's really good. Blip. Can't really dispute anything that he's talking about. Um, and I also listen to the United Stand. Um, I have problems with Mark Goldbridge on some certain things, but can't really say anything bad about what he has to say. But I'm just going to give you my 2 cents. Clearly, these guys, one guy's almost got 500,000 subscribers, the other guy's 100,000 subscriber, and the other guy is a club legend. I'm a fan, been a fan for 40 years. A little bit over 40 now. And that was always very difficult living in the United States, trying to find out what United was doing. But someday maybe I'll talk about that. Some of my other videos I talked about it. Um, Outside of growing up in St. Louis, my second love was always been Manchester United football. And I, as many people, became aware of them after what happened with their team when they died on the strip 60 years ago, and understanding how they came from that to being European champions in '68. Always thought about how that team was and how that team has always been till about the last 5 or 6 years. And I've been hesitant to talk about what I think the real issue is, because some people that watch me on this channel know that I talk about culture as it relates to race, the demographic replacement of white people, let's say. And I've seen this, and I've kind of brought it out a couple times, saying how Europeans are not getting their real shake when it comes to being at the top level when it comes to football, soccer. That somehow that early on when their development, they're not being picked and they're not being looked at as somebody that would be at that same level. It's just shocking to me, the team that we had in 62 or 92, and all the guys that were European, white guys, let's say, that went on to have great careers, not just at United, but other places, and had the greatest teams that we ever had, are not even really looked at anymore. What we see in the youth team of Manchester United is almost always black people. And again, it doesn't mean anything per se, but we're saying as an actual culture divide when it comes to what Manchester United means. And I'm not sitting here to say that being part of Manchester United makes you white, let's say. That's all that's about. But Manchester, being the city of Manchester for forever, it's been at least 90% white. Now, as it's all the other cities in Britain have gotten more and more multiculturalism, you're going to see more and more players that are going to have that background. But when you see that 80% or 90% of the players in the youth team happen to be brown, then you know that something's going on. Now, Gary Neville talked about the culture in the team, and that is a problem. Now, Gary would never say what I'm going to say, because I'm sure he's like most people. He's probably a white liberal. He grew up in England. He probably is very liberal in what he believes. But the culture, in my mind, is still tied to race. You're never going to get people that are not really let's say British or Manchurian, to give everything to their club. Now, we can look at just across the town, you have City, and everybody used to talk about all the mercenaries that they got, but they had the right coach, and they had the right philosophy. and when you actually win, that also shows the confidence, and then you actually will go after the ball and everything. The shocking thing is that Manchester United has been the most unfit team, that they don't go after the ball. They have no drive to go after the ball. And every day when they don't do well, they come out and they go on social media and said that shouldn't have happened, or we were so bad about that we don't deserve this as fans. I mean, Juan Mata said that after the last game. And at this point, I don't really want to hear this anymore. Again, it's just a sport. It doesn't really mean anything. But there's something going on here. So when Gary talks about the culture, he's talking about in the locker room that has to change. And what does that mean by that? I mean, Jose actually said what's going on. She said there was a virus in the locker room. And I said back then, I already know who the virus was. Pogba just came off winning the World Cup. Now, last year we finished second. And when Jose said that was probably the greatest job he ever did as a manager, I 100% agreed with him. And I had a video about that because everybody's like, we got to get rid of him. He's not a good coach. I said, do you see what he did with his team? They got 81 points last year. Some of our play was putrid, but we got good results. Now, because Jose kind of rares on people, he's a type of manager that won't stay around for a long time. But what's happened when Pogba came back from winning the World Cup, everybody said that it was on him. That's how they won the World Cup. If you take a real rational look at the World Cup, France didn't really do anything. They played good defense, and every now and then Pogba did something. Just because he scored in the final doesn't mean that he was the best player in the tournament. He wasn't the best player on that team. The guy from Madrid, Atletico Madrid, had the best World Cup, and they also had Mbappe. So what happens is now you got these 19, 20-year-old guys, and even Lingard, who's 25, who still shouldn't be influenced so much about that. They look at Pogba and they see all the great following that he gets online, and this guy just won the World Cup, and they think that that's the model that they have to follow. And the problem is that they don't do what they're supposed to do to be top flight professionals. Now, again, this is not really racial at all, because when you have so much money involved in the game, this is what happens to it. Almost every sports, when people got so much more money than the actual fan, the game suffered, and certainly Manchester United is seeing that right now. But now you have to find somebody that can find those players that's going to play regardless of how much money they make. And as bad as Sanchez has been so far, he hasn't played much, but he's always trying. Now, he's not worth $500,000 a week, and he's been a bust, probably the biggest bust probably in the history of the sport. I mean, even worse than Di Maria and worse than Falcao. At least those guys played a few more games. But there's a culture in the game, and I really believe that everybody looks at Pogba, whether he's got the captain armband or not, that he is the leader on the team. David De Gea is not a leader in the clubhouse. There's nobody in the defense. Maybe in the future that Lindelof might be that way. Maybe there was a time that Herrera would have been that way, but he became like any other player that he decided he was leaving Manchester United to get $20,000 more a week, and he's not probably going to start in PSG. So this is, what everybody we thought about Herrera, that he would die for the Manchester United team. I'm not really sure that's the case at all. I'm not going to sit there and say that he's a mercenary either, but it kind of looks that way. And this is, everybody talks about, this is the modern football. That the problem is in the very good teams, they don't really have these issues. Now, they might have a couple of guys that might get sulky, but if the manager has the support of the staff and the fans and stuff, then they're going to allow him to do what he needs to do, to be more disciplinarian. Now, Pep Guardiola gets away with it because even though they haven't won the Champions League, they win the Premiership League, they've won a couple cups, so he gets that leeway. And so many people said that this team is made from money, from oil money, and that's why they're so good, and they're all mercenaries. They said the same thing about Chelsea. But the truth is that the team that played yesterday, they were fighting for everybody. I haven't seen a team like that in Manchester in a long time. And I have nothing but respect for them now. And I hate them. I hate them as a passion. Not as much as I hate Liverpool. But Liverpool's the same way. Everybody plays for each other. And they did this even before Klopp got there. Those players always played for each other. Now, you can blame Louis van Gaal. You can blame Moyes. You can blame Ferguson, you can, because the team he left behind was getting old and probably wasn't as good. He had a great, they won the Premiership the last year he was there. He had a great job managing that team, but they had great players that would always track back and defend. This team that we have right now do not go after the ball. There's 4 or 5 guys that might, and then the rest of them sit there and they complain. Every time that Rashford gets fouled, he sits up and complains to the referee. Same thing with Pogba. Same thing with all of them. I mean, I would love to say that except Scott McTominay, the rest of them, they just have not played at the level. And yeah, there's a time in every player's career, like when Young and Jones and these guys get to the next level where they can't be at the same level. And I think that in this season we're seeing that with Young. I think that he's lost a step, and people just hate him but at least he's trying in a lot of ways. But he should not be playing for Manchester United. Not to play. He shouldn't be the captain of Manchester United. So, and then we have these idea. And Gary Neville talked about this, saying that this team is not as good as everybody thinks it is. And I've been saying it for years. I've been saying it when they finished second last year. I said that he did so much with this team, because when people sit there and say how quick Martial is, how fast he is, how much pace he has, or when Rashford and how fast he is, or how Lingard has they're not. They're not even close to being world class when it comes to that. Put them up against Mbappe and just have them run next to each other and see what real speed is. It ain't them. Those guys don't get past anybody. If there's somebody that's with them, unless it's a great Paul, they don't have enough to get behind the defender. They don't. And then most of them do not have the ability to take the time and make the goals. Now, Rashford made some great goals against Liverpool and other stuff that you see the quality there. Same thing with Martial, the same way. But Martial is not Ronaldo. And Ronaldo is all about faster, a lot faster than he was. He is not Giggsy. He is not even. I don't think he's faster than Shaw. I really don't believe this. And I think on this channel, I think the biggest view I've ever had in any of my videos was about Shaw and his fitness. That Jose made him get more fit, and all of a sudden became one of the better players. Now, he made a bad mistake in the last game, but we should be able to score more than 1 goal against Huddersfield. I mean, seriously. If we can't do that, we don't deserve to be going to the top 4. So, regardless of all this, so on this channel I talk about things that are talking about the replacement of white people or the Europeans. And when you see that in the biggest sport overseas, it is clearly what we're seeing. And I just want to point to a team that's kind of nowhere, have a chance to go to your Champions League final tomorrow, and that's Ajax. Now, they have guys that are not black, that are not white. They've got a few people from Brazil and some other places, but 80% of their team is either not native born or the European, and they're white. And this idea that they can't win at that level, because why? Because we think that white people are not as fast as black, brown people. I mean, it seems like the people that are actually looking at talent of these players, they just look at and say, hey, they can win a 40 and 4.6, or they can jump, just like they do in the NFL. And it's the same thing that's going on there as well. And of course, this is more to it than that. If white people are not having babies, it's kind of hard for them to play as sports, And if they're being pushed to something else, or they're being shamed for the entire life, that they're the ones that have all the privilege in their mind, that they're never going to do what they have to do to get to the next level. And you got to give it to people that come from areas that they don't have anything, and they become great athletes. I mean, I'm sure that Marshall Rashford didn't have a lot of money. A lot of the guys that were in the U team, they're from Manchester, didn't come up, and I don't really have an issue with them per se, but they're easily influenced, and you can tell why it's happening. And it's just like, and I hate to put a parallel here, but it's like the product at the WWE has been failing for a long time. There are a lot of people who have been calling out and said this is what needs to change. The same thing's happened in Manchester United. We all know what the problem is, from the Glazers all the way down to Woodward and the locker room team. I don't really think that any of the coaches was the issue. You might say Louis van Gaal because of his style of play, but the rest of it is come down to the aging in the locker room. The idea that when you play for Manchester United, everything has to be on the line. That you're gonna what they call but whatever you're going to do, you go through a wall for your coach. And after they don't get exactly the right press about themselves, and then they just turn on the coach, they don't do it overtly, but they do it. When you don't go back and defend where you're supposed to be, or when the coach says you're supposed to be in this position, you don't do that. That's defiance to the coach. And once other players see that you're being defiant, and that coach doesn't replace you or anything like that, they think they do the same thing. They think it becomes their own culture of entitlement. So I think what Gary is talking about culture, he's talking about this sect of players at this time in history. This is what they have. That they're enlightened, or they're entitled. That a lot of people, older guys like me, say that about the younger generation, that they're entitled. Well, I look over to Manchester City across the way. These guys get as much money as the guys that play for Manchester United, and they always play for each other. And if you're somebody like Sané and you're sulking, you don't play. You don't get to state. You know, obviously he plays him in because he's a talent, but he doesn't get to start. And I mean, the same thing happened with Aguero. So, and this is the same thing that Ferguson did. He would shit you down if you weren't doing what you're supposed to do. And it cost us probably maybe a Champions League final or something. A couple of things he did that he didn't play Bex against Real early on. I mean, there were certain things he did, but he allowed everybody else to say he's still the guy in charge. Now, I hope that Ole is the guy that's going to do something about it, and he's going to get all these people out of the locker room, and then for the other side, that they'll figure that out. They'll get somebody in that's, like Gary says, somebody that understands, just not ex-players. That is not always going to be the issue anymore. You need to find somebody who's been doing it for a long time. If it was me, I'd go who's whether dealing with Ajax, and I would look at their model, and I would do that. And me saying that is that they need to go find native-born players, and they need to recruit them. And if they end up being 10th in the league next year, and the team looks like it's from Britain, then I think that's a good thing. And eventually they'll get better.